Hello folks, so Burnham's going to be worse than Starmer. That's what we can look at today. So, if we look back to sort of the end of the Tories and when Labour came in 2004, just to have a quick sort of reflection really, and if we look sort of the estate of things just before Labour took over, then the country was £2.7 trillion in debt, which obviously is extremely bad. The general economy was slightly on the upturn, nothing much to talk about, but it was slightly on the upturn. And our economy was in a better condition than the rest of Europe, basically. Which isn't to say too much because the rest of Europe is in quite a bad state as well. So we were sort of, I suppose, the better out of a poor bunch. So I suppose that would be correct to sum it up in that way. So Starmer took over in July 2004. It was a Labour government, actually, wasn't it? But Starmer thinks he's a dictator, and he certainly, no doubt, behaved like one. Thank God he's going. But let's have a look at their track record since then. Between 2004 and sort of April 2006, the national debt went up to £3 billion, 2.9 something to be precise, but £3 trillion. So that's about £300 billion increase in the national debt. Taxes went up. Now, usually when taxes go up, less tax receipts come in, because what we have learned in the past, at least Labour haven't learned that, but what we've learned by experience is that if taxes go up, there's less tax income coming in. And what tends to happen is that things like tax goes up, so you and I spend a bit less. Businesses invest a bit less. So very rich people will go abroad, so we won't be getting any tax off them. So whereby somebody might be like the head of Pimlico Plumbers, as an example. At the beginning of the Labour government, he was saying he's leaving Britain because he's just not prepared to give money to a government that he felt that would throw the money away. And I think that he said that over the years he's paid about £11 million in tax. So I don't know what he means by over the years, but should we say if that was the last 22 years, then he was paying £500,000 in tax. So when he goes abroad, we lose that £500,000 in tax, won't we? As well as the extra tax that we were supposed to get from him by putting taxes up. Now, if you repeat that across people that are quite rich, then, you know, the receipts of money are going to go down. We're going to spend less, as I said. Businesses are going to be hesitant to invest. That slows the economy down. That in turn gets us into that downward spiral of less tax returns. So I would suggest that would equate to less tax returns. Some of their policies they haven't been gaining any money on. They put VAT on private schools. What's the point in that? It's just meant that quite a lot of children have had to go into the state system, which means the state has had to pay for all of their education. And in terms of special needs children out of those, they sometimes have to be placed back into a private school anyway because the state hasn't got the facilities, and that costs even more. So, and then you get some private schools have to close down, which has happened. So there again, it's a situation where there's less tax coming in. So perhaps that decision was made more for ideological reasons rather than what's best for Britain and what's best for the economy. So that's one area where they made a bit of a mess, really. There were some areas where they weren't going to save too much money. I mean, what they were going to save by picking on the farmers was not very much, was it? It was a couple of £1 billion a year or something, which in the throw of things is not a lot of money. And with the pensioners, stopping the heat payments for anybody that's earning over, I think it's 30,000, isn't it? I think it might be less than that. There's negligible savings on that. I think it was £1.5 billion or something like that. So really, I don't know why they did that, because it made them so unpopular straight away, didn't it? So I don't see the logic behind that. But there again, that meant a lower income for them. Plus, it would mean that pensioners would look more at applying for pension credit if they weren't on it already, or applying for attendance allowance. And then you get people like sort of social workers and medics and people like that would sort of say to people, have you applied for pension credit? Have you applied for attendance allowance? So they'd be encouraging people to apply. So they'd be paying out more, I would think. I don't know how much more. It's hard to tell, isn't it, on those things. Which will cancel at least part, probably more actually. I think it probably cost them more. So I think they might have lost money on that one as well. So, that's not too good, is it? And then they had the raising the national insurance stamps, which again played into that downward spiral of the economy. Remember, people are spending less already because of taxes going up, and those people haven't got so much money if they're paying more tax. And then on top of that, you've got the national insurance. And that would put employers in positions where they couldn't afford. So they either had to lay people off or close their business or plod along with less employees. So you get small businesses, got 3 or 4 employees, and a businessman's thinking of getting 1 or 2 more in to make it easier and get things going a bit. They're not going to do that. They're going to cut down. So there's less jobs. And that in terms means there's more people claiming benefits, and that costs the state money. So all in all, one would hope that Labour would have come in 24 with a really good plan to put into action, so that coming round to 26, at least if they hadn't made things any worse, if things were the same, if the national debt was the same, if the income from taxes was the same, then that would be the worst scenario that one would be looking for. One would hope for a slight improvement after 2 years, but we haven't got a slight improvement, have we? Because the national debt has actually increased by £300 billion. There's probably less tax income coming in, although they put taxes up, and they didn't really know what they were doing right from the beginning. That I find very worrying. They had 13 years to make a plan and come in with a solid plan, even if it was something that wasn't going to work, even if it's something that everyone totally disagrees with. At least it would be a plan, the base to start with, but they didn't have any plan. And I needn't say too much about Keir Starmer. I think it's just very good that he's going, and I'm sure that most of the country would agree with me on that one. So there you go. Now, we've got Burnham, who they say is going to be the next Prime Minister, and he probably will. Let's take a look at Andy Burnham. He was in the Blair government. Yes, the Blair government. Yes. And he ran for leader, or leader of the opposition, twice in the past. Couldn't have been when they're in government, would it? Because he would have been a prime minister then. So before Blair or after Blair, he ran for leader of the opposition twice. He ran against Jeremy Corbyn and he failed, and he ran against Miliband and he failed. And then he went off to be mayor of Manchester. And I'm sure he did lots and lots of good things up there. Oh, yeah, I'm sure he did. But apparently the buses were in financial crisis after he implemented his plans for the buses. And also in terms of targets for house building, he missed his targets every year. I was hearing through a reliable source the other day. He didn't really seem very responsive positively in terms of the R gangs, the graping gangs in up north. In fact, it had been reported that he perhaps wasn't too willing to sort of look at that, that he wasn't actually very positive about it, but making the right sounds. I think that's what we've got from various people that have been campaigning, especially Maggie, isn't it? Maggie, I can't remember her last name, used to be a police officer in Manchester and left the police in disgust at them not looking at the grape gangs properly, and has been campaigning since. And I think some other orators have been talking about Burnham and the way that he actually hadn't been getting to grips with that at all. So that's there again, this business about votes come before children and the complete failure to safeguard children. And the resistance of a national inquiry. They were resisting and resisting and resisting a national inquiry, weren't they? Until they were actually put in a position where they didn't really have an option. And they called a national inquiry and have tried to trip it up really on the way, haven't they? With some of the survivors backing out because they wouldn't work with the Minister for Safeguarding. I can't remember her name now. She's a Birmingham MP, isn't she, who won her seat by I think it's about 700 and something votes. So obviously she's more interested in votes than safeguarding children. And then to top all that, after completely failing children and completely failing to safeguard children, Starmer has the gall to come up with this online ban for the under-16s because he cares about the safety of children. Who's going to believe that? Absolutely something else, isn't it? She's like the butcher that said he wanted to be a vegetarian. He's just cutting a pig up. It just does not wash, and we all know what Starmer was after, what he is after with this offline safety thing. It's nothing to do with making the children safe. It's to do with shielding them from opinions other than that meets the ideology of these Marxists, and left so they can be manipulated and influenced to the left ideology in school. That's what that is partly about. It's also about the introduction of ID cards. Because to make that online bans work, then people have got to prove that they're over 16, haven't they? Otherwise, I'll be banned from the internet. So I have to prove my age to go on the internet. That's bound to follow. And then we're there. We're almost there, aren't we? Halfway to having ID cards, which we didn't want. And he knows we didn't want, but he thought he's the dictator. He knows best. Also, there's been talk about homeschooling and either abolishing homeschooling or putting pretty strict limits on it. And basically, I think that is probably around concern that if people are homeschooling, if children are homeschooling, that they may not be getting the input the state requires in terms of their ideology, Marxist ideology. So it's the case of control, isn't it? State control. So that's what's happened in the last 2 years. Please leave your comments. If you disagree or if you agree, leave your comments, say what you think. But that's what basically happened. As for Burnham, nearly forgot his name then. I wonder why. It must have left a massive impression on me. From what Burnham seemed to be saying, from what I could make out in Manchester during the by-election up there, the things he was saying in terms of what he wanted to do sounded very, very much like Starmer. In fact, very close to what Starmer was saying before the general election in 2004. So it seems that his agenda and ideology is certainly pretty much the same as Starmer, or more to the left. It's certainly not anything else. So he may take us more left. He's also, I believe, talked about the nationalisation of various things as well. Although where on earth you get the money from to start nationalising things when you're £3 trillion in debt is something that I haven't quite worked out yet. Maybe he's a magician, I don't know. So all indicators, in my view, is towards Burnham being no better than Starmer, maybe even worse. A critical time for this country, absolutely critical. We're on our knees and we'll be totally bankrupt unless somebody can come in and financially turn the country round. Get us on the right path. We need to be paying the interest on the debt every year, which is about £120 billion a year, I think, which is a little bit more than twice the defence budget every year. That's the interest. Plus, we need to pay a little bit more off on top so that at least the debt starts to decrease. If it's only £100 million extra a year on top of the 120 billion, then at least it's a little bit, and at least it gets the trend of debt coming down a bit. And that's the absolute minimum that we actually need to do. Because if we carry on getting in debt, the IMF will be involved. And, well, we won't go into that now, but that won't be good news for anyone. And if the country goes bankrupt, then how are they going to pay pensions? How are they going to pay benefits? How are they going to support education? How are they going to support the NHS? And how will all that leave the welfare state as a whole at the end of the day? The country going bankrupt is going to be bad for everyone, absolutely everyone, apart from the extreme rich, of course, which a lot of the politicians are. They'll just shift their money elsewhere. Anyway, that's it. Hope you're having a good weekend, and we'll catch up again later. Bye now.